And we're here finally with finals of the PC, the Premier Challenge here at Balance Patch. I'm so excited to be here with Naheem. I'm Jacob. And, again, if you're liking everything, all the action that you've seen today for Pokemon VGC, we do have the mid-season showdown coming up March 17th. It's at 2:30 p.m., another, afternoon start time here at Balance Patch here in Alston. And, even more points on the line. The cap has been raised from this event from 32
nice.
up to 56.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I believe is the number that he said. So, going to be a lot of fun, a lot of people playing some high-level Pokemon.
It's going to be a good time to come on down.
Yeah. Now, getting into this matchup, as you know, we saw Calvin Tobias winning last round on stream. He's made it into finals, and we'll take a look at his team now. And we'll see a little bit later on how he's going to stack up against John Lyons, who we saw in top 8 on stream as well, able to beat Adrian Hurley in a rematch of the midseason showdown last weekend in finals. John Lyons, Adrian Hurley played, and now John comes out on top to face Calvin. It's a team we've seen pretty recently, but still a lot of text that we haven't seen on stream yet. The Hisuian Arcanine, we didn't get to see it all in that last matchup. The Landorus, we got to see it do some pretty impressive work cleaning up the end of that last game. But I don't think he brought the Urshifu to either set.
No, I don't think he quite did. Honestly, this is a really awesome team. I'm hoping we see this Hisuian Arcanine. Just give him some play.
Just get some airtime. I think
he's a good boy.
This is this is a great matchup for two fire types in the format.
Sure.
That are very polarizing, I think we'll say.
Yes.
The Hisuian Arcanine has gotten a lot of flack now that Incineroar is back in the format. There's been a lot of discussion on, Fraud Canine versus, Goat Incineroar and things like that. I'm still a believer in Hisuian Arcanine, as is Calvin. I think we've seen enough play from Calvin that we can trust his opinion as a player.
Absolutely.
And the Hisuian Arcanine, especially with the Choice Band, is just able to do so much damage
that
it's hard to say no. Landorus Therian is a Pokemon that in the past has really just wanted to get on the field and click Rock Slide as much as possible. The problem is Landorus doesn't really love clicking Rock Slide because it doesn't do much damage.
Not as much anymore.
The Hisuian Arcanine, while it has a lower base attack stat, is able to invest more into its attack because it is less of a defensive piece. As more offense, you get the Choice Band plus the same type attack bonus on the Rock Slides and on something like the Head Smash that you're able just to click this move and do wonders in the opposing team.
Absolute wonders. Just significant little bits of damage. Emphasis on big bits, actually.
Yeah, it's a team from Calvin that, in that same vein, you really do thrive on dealing little bits of damage with some of your other threats to allow for things like the Landorus or the Urshifu to clean up in the end game. I think we can go over and see John Lyons' open team sheet as well, and see that I think this is a matchup where this Hisuian Arcanine can do a little bit more work. You have the Gouging Fire again for John, where that Pokemon really does not want to be staring across a Hisuian Arcanine, especially if it terrestrializes to a Fairy type to be immune to the Breaking Swipes. But John also has those threats in something like the King Gambit, which we'll love to see in Arcanine because it gets the Defiant boost from Intimidate. Of course, the Ogerpon and the Rillaboom, great partners for the Gouging Fire. Love to be boosted up by Howl from that Pokemon. And then rounding it out with the same kind of strong special attacking core of the Flutter Mane, crucially with the Focus Sash on John's side. So it will be the slower of the two Flutter Manes, but it will not be KO'd in one hit. And this Landorus that also is a little bit different, sporting the Terra Fire Terra Blast as opposed to the substitute in that 4th slot.
Also, gotta give shoutouts to this Rillaboom. Rillaboom, just a solid Pokemon overall. The Grassy Surge, really powerful ability, giving you a little bit of recovery to the rest of your team, alongside really powerful Pokemon like King Gambit to reduce that ground-type weaknesses, right? And we're gonna see maybe if that King Gambit can bring John Lyons the victory here that he needs. It's a really powerful Pokemon. Of course, that Intimidate on the other side in the form of Hisuian Arcanine could play a big factor in that, and I don't know.
Yeah, of course, the King Gambit, again, loves to see an Intimidator on the other side, but we see a lot of, I think, interesting terrestrialization choices. The Gouging Fire is the Terra Fairy option, and that's something that has been pretty popular throughout all of Regulation F. Of course, Flutter Mane loves to be Terra Fairy just so it can click strong Moonblasts, but the Terra Flying on King Gambit as the option, just to be completely immune to ground-type damage, something that you alluded to that Rillaboom also helps out with. The Landers with the Terra Fire is something that I haven't seen prior to seeing John's team.
I have never seen that either.
Absolutely.
Honestly, and that's what we're looking for, right? Versatility in our options. Just having multiple ways. If I can't terrorize my King Gambit, then at least I can go for the Flying Terra and be immune anyway, right? So it's actually quite a strong position. As we see, the King Gambit makes it show.
Yeah, right away, the Hisuian Arcanine and the King Gambit. Of course, Hisuian Arcanine can Terastallize to the Fairy type, so it can get rid of any neutral damage that King Gambit can do with Dark type attacks. Although John's King Gambit is sporting the Iron Head option as well. That could hit the Fairy. They could hit Terra Fairy Arcanine or Flutter Mane in or out of Terastallization.
Yeah, this is a perfect positioning for this Pokemon right now. King Gambit, just amazing offensive pressure. Those beautiful stabs from that typing, man. It's just a great Pokemon overall. And of course, that Intimidate giving you the +1 attack, that's not what you want to see.
Oh, no.
That's not at all what you want to see.
Things get very, very tricky here for both sides because Calvin would love to be able to click Icy Wind to drop the Flutter Mane on John's side speed and then KO it, break the Focus Sash KO with Arcanine. Problem is you can't click Icy Wind in front of a King Gambit because you'll just give it 2 more stages of attack boost.
And that's terrifying.
To say the least.
That's literally terrifying. Okay, going for a Protect with the Gambit here.
As we see, the Arcanine does Terastallize to the Fairy typing as a Moonblast comes out. Icy Wind will miss onto the Arcanine, that looks like, if I'm reading the nickname correctly. Yes, the Arcanine dodges the Icy Wind. That's crucial for maintaining speed control, and the Flare Blitz does go off into the King Gambit's Protect.
Now, of course, that if we were able to get that speed drop on this Arcanine, that'd be a really solid position for the King Gambit to get a big hit in the next turn. But we ended up whistling here. However, now that the Flutter Mane on the opposing side had their speed drop, maybe we can even go for another Icy Wind. Guaranteed go first before that Flutter Mane at least, and still drop the speed. Not sure if that's a viable option now, but it sounds decent.
Yeah, I think it's really important how these two Flutter Manes are going to be trained, where John's, you would think, because it's holding the Focus Sash, can afford to not really care about its bulk too much, can afford to be trained entirely in its speed and its special attack stat, whereas Calvin does generally have the boost for Flutter Mane in the form of the booster energy with its speed, may not be trained naturally as fast as the Flutter Mane on John's side, as we'll see a couple of switches here. The King Gambit leaving the field at the same time as the Hisuian Arcanine, and both of these big new dragons, the past Paradox Pokemon, will now hit the field.
This is actually an insane turn for John. Perfectly reading, hey, you know what? If you remove your Pokemon, oh, what? That did over half. That was a lot more than I expected.
And I think a pretty good indicator of exactly how this Flutter Mane on John's end is trained. We saw that number one, it does outspeed Calvin's when Calvin's Flutter Mane is at -1 speed.
Correct.
And it looks very strong in the fact that it was able to do more than half of Raging Bolt's health. It looked like somewhere in the range of about 2/3 with an unboosted Moonblast. No special attack booster energy, no choice specs, no Terra Fairy option. Just straight up, very strong Moonblast.
This is a very scary position to be in. I feel like Calvin doesn't want to lose their Raging Bolt so early, but... Oh, okay, a switch out's happening for John here.
Yeah, John covering the option for a Thunderclap to pick up his low health Flutter Mane into that slot. Looked like he also clicked the Breaking Swipe, which I would assume he's hoping will do enough damage into the opposing Raging Bolt, as the Gouging Fire will also Terastallize. We've got, another Fairy has entered the field. Like, these Fire types on both sides that love to turn into Fairy types.
Oh, they love to turn into Fairies indeed. I mean, look at the big old hearts. They love that thing, man. Come on.
Yeah. And John does get the call right, the Thunderclap whiffing into the King Gambit switch in. This Breaking Swipe will not damage Flutter Mane at all. And it does significant damage to the Raging Bolt, but not enough to pick up the KO, as we'll see what the Flutter Mane does, and it is the Icy Wind.
What a call! Bringing back in this Gambit, it's gonna get that beautiful attack raise. 2 whole stages, and what's even scarier is that, hey, you got an Arcanine in the back over there, buddy.
Yeah, as soon as Arcanine hits the field, King Gambit is going to get another attack boost at this point, and again, there really isn't that much damage on Calvin's side that threatens this King Gambit.
You know what is going to threaten a lot of damage though? That Sucker Punch.
Yeah, of course the King Gambit has to be a little bit careful about the Sucker Punch targeting. The Raging Bolt on Calvin's side likely faster, can click a faster Thunderclap. That would keep any damage from coming out into that slot. But a Sucker Punch into this Flutter Mane.
And there goes the Thunderclap, just as you called, but we properly positioned ourselves.
But
it didn't go for it.
And so
It went for
the
taunt. How interesting, not getting that much damage out from the Flutter Mane, but we're able to avoid a significant amount of... That was a lot of damage. So you got hit for a lot of damage.
Had to cut yourself off in the middle there, but not enough to pick up the knockout. I think that's crucial for Calvin's side, knowing that his Flutter Mane is able to survive that attack from Gouging Fire. And again, a difference that we've seen in John's Gouging Fire versus ones earlier in the day, and many of the format, is that he is carrying Flare Blitz as opposed to Heat Crash. So that recoil damage is going to stick. There's no recovery on John's side of the field for this Gouging Fire. So that's very important on his side as the Thunderclap comes out into that slot still.
Sucker Punch going to go ahead and take the knockout here on this Flutter Mane. It's going to go ahead and go down, not going to be able to get an attack in. But you know who else is going to get an attack in? This Breaking Swipe. But will it get enough to KO? Yes, just enough, of course. Oh, it was a little low on HP anyway. But we do get the double knockout here, which is looking really good for John.
Yeah, John quickly up now 4-2 in Pokemon count as the Hisuian Arcanine is going to come back out for Calvin.
Oh boy.
Very spooky in this spot as you're just going to give this King Gambit another attack boost from the Defiant ability. But Water Ogerpon Wellspring Mask for Calvin as well the last. I think this is a Pokemon that is pretty well positioned. Now that the Gouging Fire is no longer a Dragon type, you can hit it with a Horn Leech or an Ivy Cudgel into that slot.
This is very scary for Calvin. We're going to have to maneuver it around this turn extremely cautiously. You need to deal with this for +3 King Gambit here. It's very terrifying to take down.
Yeah, a very, very scary Pokemon, and it looks like John is going to try to play this turn a little bit safely.
Okay, I like the Spiky Shield. Might get some chip damage if the King Gambit attacked into that slot, but it just goes for a Protect here.
Now the King Gambit safely protects, wants to scout out what Calvin is going to do. Of course, the Flare Blitz not doing any damage from Calvin's Fire type, now turned Fairy into the Protect.
Oh, this is a big Flare Blitz. Oh, okay, just a little above half still. That's actually not terrible.
That's fairly strong damage, and importantly, of course, the Gouging Fire on John's side does have the Taunt wear off this turn, so now free to click something like a Burning Bulwark or a Howl.
Howl would be insane right now.
Howl would be extremely scary. The question is,
he's
with this King Gambit, if it were to click Sucker Punch, I would imagine a Sucker Punch at +3 would be enough to handle this Ogerpon, and it is.
No way! That's so much doubts. Okay, all right, goodbye Ogerpon. That's a knockout. That's a knockout, bro.
That is just a strong KO there, and now, after this KO on the King Gambit, now 3-1. But again, this Hisuian Arcanine is going to keep taking recoil every single turn it clicks Flare Blitz. Importantly, without the speed booster energy on Gouging Fire, this Hisuian Arcanine on Calvin's side is faster. To be an indication of how these Pokemon are trained, as we saw the Flare Blitz go off before Gouging Fire was able to click its Howl. The problem is that this Flutter Mane is likely still faster than Hisuian Arcanine no matter what, and is able to finish off this first game in John's favor.
Unfortunately, just a little too late. Finally finding the KO you wanted on this King Gambit, but you already did the damage. Just 3 Pokemon gone to this guy.
Yeah, that's something that John played extremely well with in that first game, is the pressure that King Gambit applies, whether or not you actually click attacks. He was able to kind of hide the King Gambit around, move it around the board.
Like a King Piece?
Is that why they call it that? That's crazy. The light bulb going on right at that moment. But no, he was able to play so well with that King Gambit, protecting it from any damage throughout the game. And for Calvin's end, you're just trying to trade damage on other pieces throughout the game that just weren't able to do what they needed to. You were on the back foot from turn 1 because you led the Intimidate into the Defiant Pokemon. And then because the opposing Flutter Mane is both naturally faster than your own Flutter Mane and still has the Ice You Into option that it can click pretty freely, you were just losing the speed war as well.
I gotta say, if I was in this position, I would be shook to bring that Hisuian Arcanine back. We wanted to see it. I don't know if I want to see it no more.
No, I still think Hisuian Arcanine is very strong in this matchup. You can see the matchup that it has into pretty much all of John's other Pokemon, especially if it goes to the Fairy type. Hisuian Arcanine's able just to put on a ton of pressure and do a ton of damage to everything that John has. The issue is that you do have that King Gambit that even if you can Terastallize your Arcanine to a Fairy type, you're not taking super effective damage from Kowtow Cleaves or Sucker Punches. All of your other Pokemon are. All of your other Pokemon are still fodder for these Sucker Punches from King Gambit, or at the very least you have to respect those options. I think, Calvin still played very well in the middle stages of that game. The turn that he was able to get the taunt off onto the Gouging Fire, reminiscent from the end of his game in top 4 against Cage, where he was able to click the taunt on the Sucker Punch turn and win that board positioning there. The issue is that you were just already so far behind in that game.
It's hard to claw back up from that deficit, man.
Yeah, but we will see how Game 2 shakes out here. I think there are still certainly valuable options that Calvin has. I think that Hisuian Arcanine is something that still should make an appearance in the second game. I just don't know if it's necessarily the best Pokemon to be led into what John has. As again, we see not going to be the case as the Landorus mirror on both sides, the Landorus Incarnate and Urshifu single strike form for Calvin, across from the Focus Sash Flutter Mane and the Landorus Incarnate for John.
I also gotta really shout out John here, just changing up the leads. I already caught you off guard at the King Gambit. I know you're not gonna fall for that same trick twice. Let's switch it up and see how you deal with this kind of pressure now.
Yeah, this is, again, just still very strong for John's favor, where he has the Flutter Mane that is likely the fastest Pokemon on the field at this point. You can threaten the Icy Winds to take speed control from both of Calvin's Pokemon.
Sure.
And this Landorus Incarnate on Calvin's side, as long as John doesn't Terastallize his Landorus, can't really do too much damage to it. And vice versa. The issue is that the Urshifu on Calvin's side is a lot more in trouble from this opposing Landorus.
Look at that damage.
But not if it dodges this Icy Wind. As the Earth Power comes out, it's going to bring this this Urshifu down to its Focus Sash.
That's crazy.
But the Icy Wind miss, letting the Urshifu survive through this turn, fire off a Wicked Blow, doing a ton of damage to this Landorus, and a substitute for Calvin just barely has enough HP.
Just enough HP, that's huge! That substitute's gonna go miles for you now. You are free to do whatever you want in this next turn, essentially. But still pretty low on HP, though.
Of course, both these Pokemon very, very low on their health, and we can see actually for John, he didn't even bring the King Gambit in the back. So if this Hisuian Arcanine does come through and Calvin is able to make it through this lead, has a very strong matchup into the final 2 Pokemon that John has. Going to see John now try to play a little bit more defensively here. He's under threat of a Sucker Punch into this Landorus slot. He's under threat of the opposing Landorus just getting off damage into his Pokemon. But we see 3 protects this turn.
I really like the scouting for the Flutter Mane's protect here. And now in the next turn, we're going to be...
Yeah, we see the only Pokemon that attacks is John's Landorus, which does click Earth Power into the Urshifu. And I think an interesting play for both players, because if you're John, you're almost comfortable just giving... It looks like you're almost comfortable just giving up your Landorus on that turn if the Urshifu just clicks Sucker Punch into you, which seems like a pretty likely play.
Yeah.
But for Calvin, I think very smart just to play the board state, try to stall out any protects that John goes for, so that you know where you can safely attack the next turn, which is now into this Flutter Mane, as we will see the Sucker Punch go into that slot.
So much damage.
Another Icy Wind comes out. It will connect with both this time, so it'll break Landorus' substitute and knock out this Urshifu. But for Calvin, you still have your own Landorus to attack, and I would think because the Flutter Mane just protected this past turn, likely an attack going off into that slot.
I gotta say, I really liked that, you got the value out of your Urshifu. You were able to do a very good chunk of damage, and now you also get the KO here thanks to that Urshifu. So yeah, it did go down, but the damage has already been done already, right?
Yep, and now you can see the 2 Pokemon in the back for John. Both of them, you have a lot of value here. Of course, the Rillaboom is going to be the Pokemon of choice. Threatens a Grassy Glide into this opposing Landorus Incarnate. That would just blow it off of the face of the map. But not if this Ogerpon has anything to say for it. This potential redirection here, very, very important for Calvin's side in how he's going to be able to close out this game.
I actually love the decision here to go for that fake out. Can he be able to do the chip damage to Landorus, probably get that KO too, and then it's just the Ogerpon over there that you have to worry about in terms of attacking. and it's going to be going into potentially a Rillaboom? Like, okay, I guess.
The Landers is carrying the Sludge Bomb, has an option to hit the Rillaboom super effectively. I just don't think that Calvin's Landers at this stage of the game is going to be able to get another attack off with the Fake Out, with the Grassy Glide, the priority that is threatened from John's side, and this Gouging Fire that, even if Calvin had protected on that turn, would have been faster and threatened to knock out the next turn. Ivy Cudgel now coming out into the Gouging Fire, and we see why this Pokemon has been so good in this format, and that's, it just takes that with ease, especially with the grassy terrain on the field.
Grassy terrain, give you that little bit of recovery, so good, so good.
Now the Raging Bolt, the last Pokemon for Calvin, at another deficit. He's down 3 Pokemon to 2, but I think if there's any one that can come back in this game, this Raging Bolt is a pretty solid option for Calvin.
Again, Raging Bolt has just been doing so much work throughout the course of this entire day. Everyone who brought it had success with that Pokemon.
It'd just be poetic.
For a reason. Yeah, it's just poetic at this point. Let's see it win. Like, hold on.
So we'll see the Fairy Terastallization, an option for both the Gouging Fire as well as, double check to make sure I'm not saying anything out of turn, but yes, the Raging Bull on Calvin's side also has the option to Terastallize to a Fairy type. Both of these dragons could get completely rid of that dragon type weakness, and it looks like that's what the Gouging Fire will do for John.
Good decision too, because we do know that Raging Bull got Dragon Pulse, right? Yeah, we don't want to take damage from that at all.
No Terastallization from Calvin's end though, as he will take super effective damage from this Breaking Swipe. Now, Ogerpon throws off an Ivy Cudgel, goes into the Gouging Fire, and
that's just eating it up.
And a high horsepower to Raging Bolt, doing a lot for the Dragon Pulse right into the Fairy Terastallization, and that is going to make this game significantly more difficult, as Calvin really doesn't get too much out of that turn.
I think this is like the first time we've seen a Raging Bolt get attacked on the physical side. Am I wrong? Like, hold on.
Yeah, we've seen it take things like Wicked Blows from Urshifu and Ivy Cudgels from boosted Ogerpons, but a super effective high horsepower, that's the kind of move that is still going to do a lot of damage to a Raging Bolt, whether or not it Terastallizes.
Yeah, for sure.
That's something that John had covered for too. We are going to see a Terastallization here from Calvin's side. It's either going to be this Ogerpon to make it even weaker to the Rillaboom's grass-type moves, or it's going to be the Raging Bolt that would allow it to just be Grassy Glided. But as Ogerpon goes for the Terra Water, see how much damage that he can muster at this stage of the game, as it's just going to be a Howl coming through from John's Gouging Fire.
Such a good move, powering up that Rillaboom even scarier heights. Now that Grassy Glide's going to be doing the damage it used to.
Yeah, this Terra Water Ivy Cudgel comes out.
Ooh, the
critical hit may have mattered in that case. We've seen a lot of recovery from grassy terrain for this Gouging Fire. Of course, Terastallization gives it a lot more of a boost, but not sure if that would have picked it up without the Terastallization, or without the critical hit. But something that didn't need a critical hit is this +1 Wood Hammer in grassy terrain from Rillaboom right into that Raging Bolt. Is going to take it out and turn this into a 2v1, with John's side having a huge advantage with that Rillaboom.
That Rillaboom is going to be the deciding factor, I feel like, even if you can use a priority move, which probably isn't even on an Ogerpon right now. It's too much to deal with. A Spiky Shield could be what you need here, though.
Yep, the Rillaboom, of course, trying to hit it with a +1 Grassy Glide. Will take a little bit of damage from the Spiky Shield here. The issue is that, of course, is Ogerpon going to be able to capitalize on this once Grassy Terrain ends to knock out the Rillaboom? And even with a critical hit from a Terra-boosted Ivy Cudgel, I'm just not sure that's going to be enough to knock out a Rillaboom from essentially full health, as we still have another turn of grassy terrain that Calvin will need to stall out with another Protect.
Do you go for the double Protect here? No, we're just going to go right in, and that's got to be the game. That's such a powerful move, especially after a +1 from the Howl earlier.
Yeah, that, again, just showing the power of Gouging Fire, whether it's on lead or it's held in the back, to boost up itself and its partners and allow this Rillaboom just to clean up the endgame against a Raging Bolt and an Ogerpon.
Rillaboom, a very strong contender. You have to play around it and play for it. It's a very strong Pokemon indeed.
And for John Lyons, using, it may be the same. I think he made a couple of changes from the midseason showdown last weekend that, again, he was a finalist for and ended up falling in the final round to Adrian Hurley. now has won a PC, going back-to-back finals in New England events, something extremely difficult to do with how much talent is in the player pool here.
Yes.
And to be able to bring home the championship today is an incredible feat for John.
Yes, we have a lot of regional winners, regional contenders, world qualifiers at just this event alone. It's a lot to contend with for sure.
Yeah, and so again, shout-outs to John, and an incredible performance throughout the day, and great for Calvin as well to be able to get through some extremely tough opponents, make it to the finals, and lock himself up another strong placement with this team that he's very comfortable with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And of course, don't forget, March 17th, we will be having that mid-season showdown, and of course, there's going to be 56 players. You guys can come down, enjoy the festivities with us. We'll probably be here casting still. It's going to be a great time. Come on down.
Yeah, I'm planning on playing that mid-season showdown, but but we'll see how it goes. I might end up back in the booth depending on how I play.
So I don't want to see you, but I kind of want to see you.
Yeah. We'll be around. But again, thank you all so much for coming out for this stream. It's been a blast throughout all day here at Balance Patch. Again, for Naheem, I'm Jacob. It's been a great time. I hope you all have a great rest of your night.